Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're covering one of the most popular carpeting plants in the aquarium hobby, Monte Carlo. If you've ever seen those aquascapes where the entire foreground looks like a bright green underwater lawn, there's a very good chance Monte Carlo was the plant responsible for that look. It's become incredibly popular over the last decade because it gives you that dense carpet effect people love, but without being nearly as difficult to grow as some of the other classic carpeting plants. So in this complete guide, we're going to cover everything you need to know about growing Monte Carlo successfully. Where it comes from, lighting requirements, substrate, fertilization, CO2, propagation, and some of the most common mistakes people make when trying to grow it. Monte Carlo is a small, creeping aquatic plant originally found in parts of South America. In the wild, it tends to grow in shallow streams and wetlands where it spreads across the substrate, forming low, dense mats along the bottom. That natural growth habit is exactly why aquascapers love it so much. It naturally wants to grow outward instead of upward. Each plant has small, round, bright green leaves that grow along creeping stems. As the plant spreads, those stems send down roots into the substrate and gradually form a dense carpet. Because of this growth pattern, Monte Carlo is most often used as a foreground plant in aquariums. Now, if you've been in the hobby for a while, you may have heard people call Monte Carlo the poor man's carpet. That nickname comes from the fact that it can produce a similar carpeting effect to plants like dwarf baby tears, but is usually much easier to grow and much more forgiving. And that's one of the reasons it's such a great plant for beginners who want to try aquascaping. Now let's talk about lighting, because this is where a lot of people either succeed or struggle with Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo can technically survive in low light, but if your goal is to grow a thick carpet, low light usually isn't enough. What happens in low light is that the plant will grow more vertically instead of spreading across the substrate. The stems stretch upward trying to reach the light, and instead of a carpet, you end up with a loose, tangled growth. For best results, Monte Carlo really prefers moderate to high lighting. Under stronger lighting, the plant grows much more compact and spreads outward across the substrate instead of upward. In most planted tanks, running your lights around 6 to 8 hours per day is a good starting point. Too much light can lead to algae issues, especially while the carpet is still establishing. So it's important to find that balance. Next, let's talk about substrate, because this is extremely important for carpeting plants. Monte Carlo spreads by sending out runners and rooting itself into the substrate. Because of that, it does best in a nutrient-rich planted tank substrate, like aqua soil or other planted soils. These substrates provide nutrients directly to the roots, and it also makes it easier for the plant to anchor itself. If you're using an inert substrate like sand or gravel, Monte Carlo can still grow, but you'll usually need to supplement with root tabs or an additional fertilizer to keep it healthy. Another factor that helps Monte Carlo thrive is fertilization. Like most fast-growing plants, Monte Carlo benefits from access to both macro and micro nutrients. A good liquid fertilizer that provides nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and trace elements will help maintain strong growth and vibrant color. If your substrate is already nutrient rich, you may not need heavy fertilization, but in tanks with inert substrates, it can make a huge difference. Now, we should talk about CO2, because this is something people often ask about. The good news is Monte Carlo can grow without CO2 injection. Many hobbyists successfully grow in low-tech tanks. However, if you do run CO2, Monte Carlo will grow significantly faster and form a much denser carpet. CO2 helps the plant photosynthesize more effectively, which encourages horizontal growth and quicker spreading. So while CO2 isn't required, it can definitely speed up the carpeting process. Monte Carlo is fairly adaptable when it comes to water conditions. It generally grows best in temperatures between 70 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which is right in the range of most tropical aquariums. For pH, it tends to do best in slightly acidic to neutral water, somewhere between 6.0 and 7.5. Water hardness isn't usually a major concern as long as it stays within a moderate range. Extremely hard water can sometimes slow growth, but in most home aquariums, Monte Carlo adapts pretty well. Monte Carlo also prefers gentle to moderate water flow. Too much current can lift the plant from the substrate before it has time to root properly, especially when it's newly planted, so be sure to keep that in mind. Now let's talk about planting Monte Carlo, because the way you plant it can actually make a big difference in how well it grows. When you first get Monte Carlo, it usually comes in a clump or a tissue culture cup. Instead of planting the entire clump in one spot, it's best to divide it into many small portions. Plant those small portions a short distance apart in the substrate. As the plant grows, those sections will spread and eventually connect together, forming a continuous carpet. This method helps the carpet establish much faster than planting one large clump. Once Monte Carlo does start growing well, you'll eventually need to trim it. Just like mowing a lawn, trimming encourages the plant to grow thicker and more compact. If the carpet starts getting too tall or messy, simply trim the top layer. This encourages the plant to spread sideways instead of upward. Regular trimming every few weeks helps maintain that dense carpet look. Now let's go over a few common problems people can run into when growing Monte Carlo. One of the most common issues is Monte Carlo not carpeting. If the plant keeps growing upward instead of spreading, it's usually a lighting issue. Increasing the light intensity or improving nutrient availability can often fix this. Another common issue is yellowing leaves. This usually indicates a nutrient deficiency, often nitrogen or iron. Adding a balanced fertilizer can usually correct the problem fairly quickly. And finally, there's algae. Because Monte Carlo forms a dense carpet, it can trap nutrients, which sometimes leads to algae growth. Keeping your tank balanced with proper fertilization, good circulation, and occasional trimming helps prevent this. So overall, Monte Carlo is one of the best carpeting plants available for aquariums. It's relatively easy to grow, spreads quickly under the right conditions, and creates one of the most visually impressive foregrounds you can have in a planted tank. Whether you're building your first aquascape or just looking to add a lush green carpet to your aquarium, Monte Carlo is a fantastic choice. Thanks for watching, and if you found this guide helpful, consider liking and subscribing. I've got plenty more plant guides coming soon, and I'll see you in the next one.